Yeah, I'm doing it.
I fix my eyes on Christ.
What's up, guys? My name's Colton. I like to talk about Bibles, books, and theology-related things. And I'm making this video. It's fun, but also I know for some of you, you're going to be like, dude, what is going on with you? Because you're talking about the NASB 95 and possibly switching to that, and now this. What is going on? I want to give you a little insight into this. And if you don't know what this video is about, I am formally announcing that I am switching my main translation for not only daily reading, but for preaching and teaching to the New King James Version. If you've been following the channel for any length of time, you know that I love the English Standard Version. I love the ESV. It has been my main translation for all those things for a long time. As long as basically as long as I've been in ministry. This decision is a big one for me. And I realize, and here's the thing, some of you may be watching this, you're like, dude, like you were just considering the NAS 95. Yes, and I'll explain some of that in a little bit, but something you need to know about this whole process is this has not been just like an overnight thing. And also, I reserve the right to change my mind on things. At the same time, I want to be able to commit when I step into something. And if it just doesn't work out, then I have, like, I'm saying it right here, I have no problems going back. But I don't feel that'll be the case. And I want to talk about why. So the first thing I want to say just here right off the bat is my love for the English Standard Version remains. I love the ESV. I will continue to use it for referencing things and other applications. I still love it. I still love the NASB 95, and I will still continue to use it as I have been. But this is a shift that's been coming for a while. My heart has been restless over this for quite some time. And I've spent, this may sound weird to some of you guys, maybe not, but I've spent a considerable amount of time in prayer over this because of certain convictions that I've developed about the text of Scripture. And it's just been a long time coming, and I have poured over this in prayer. And this past Lord's Day, I was sitting in my office reading my sermon text again and reading it in multiple versions again, just reading over it a few times. I read it in the ESV that I preached it from. I read it in the NASB 95. I read it in the New King James, of course. I read it in the King James. I read it in the CSB. I just went through several. And I was just feeling this sort of wrestling. And I just, been praying for a while about it. I'm like, Lord, help me, with what to do here. And I genuinely feel the Lord just gave me a peace about going this direction, and a peace knowing that it's not a decision that has to be permanent if it doesn't work out, but at the same time, I think it will. And I just felt this overwhelming peace about it, and I was resolved. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to explain why. And of course, that I just made a long stream about how I was going to be reading through the NASB 95 again this year. I'm changing my mind. Here we go. And I know, I still love the NASB 95. I still will certainly be using it. I love that beautiful edition from Ark Bible sent to me. But because of this decision to shift that as my main preaching and teaching Bible, I'm going to be reading through the New King James, and I'm going to read through in one of my absolute favorite editions of it. I have the Thomas Nelson single column reference. I'm still going to use Be Thou My Vision, but that's what I'm doing. So I'm a human being. God does not change, but I do. Let me now take you to a part in the video where I give you my main reasons why this has been such a thing for me, why I've been considering a shift for quite some time now, and why I finally feel resolved in doing it. And I'm going to give you some of the reasons. If you follow the channel for a while, some of these will not surprise you at all. The first reason, and these aren't in a particular order, but this one might be, if I had to rank them, one of the most important. And it wouldn't stand on its own, though, so I want to be careful saying that. If some of these other things weren't true, it wouldn't stand on its own. But the first reason is text stability. Text stability. The New King James has not received any major updates since the 80s. And I know there's arguments out there about, well, language changes more than you think and all that. And sure, I get that. But the language in the New King James is beautiful. It holds up. It works great. It's still very much, I think, a text that will connect with people today. But the stability of that text, the fact that it's not going anywhere anytime soon with major updates to the body of the text itself. And, I've heard Philip Nation, who is the guy at Thomas Nelson, who's kind of over all this, say, no, there's no plans to change the base text anytime soon at all. And I like that. And part of the reason of my frustration with the ESV has been the frequent updates. And I know there can be positives for that. I get that. But especially like this last one, the 2025 update, it's like some of the things they just went back on and changed back to the way it was before. I'm thinking of Genesis 3, which is just annoying. It's like, why didn't you just leave it alone so we don't have these differences? And then also some of the things that I wished they would have changed that I'll get to here in a second, the New King James does, they didn't. And so I'm just like, the text stability, the fact that when I open the NKJV and my people open the NKJV, or my family, we open the NKJV, and know that no matter which edition I pull from, it's going to be the same text, and the stability that's there is absolutely comforting in a very practical way. I'm not trying to make an argument against updates or anything like that, but I do think there is some great value in having a stable text that is in modern English, and it is in modern English. I get it may not be what some people would want in modern English, but I think it's very well done. It's very stable, and I love that about it. And that has been a big factor in my consideration here. The NASB 95 is also a stable text, but its longevity and the amount of editions that are going to be available for it now and all that, it's just, there's a lot there that just plays into this. So the NKJV's text stability is awesome. The second reason, number 2, is that the disputed texts remain inline in the text. And they're not even in brackets here, and I get that. But when I say disputed text, I'm talking about what often gets called as the missing verses and all that. And I've never been that kind of person who's like, we have to harp on that, the missing verses or anything. No, but I do like the fact that they're inline in the text. The NASB puts them in brackets to show that they're not in some of the oldest manuscripts and things like that. I get that. That's fine. That's good. If you don't know a lot about this, is kind of the nerdy stuff. The New King James Version is the New Testament is based off the Textus Receptus, which is what the King James is translated from, the received text, if you will. And I am not like a TR only guy, never have been, never will be. Honestly, as I've weighed back and forth, I kind of like the idea of the majority text, which this kind of leans into, but the critical text has always been fine by me. It's great. Where the critical text does have a problem for me is some of these things I'm just questioning whether or not we should remove them. I don't like, and I'll give you an example. One of the disputed texts that I love that it's in there is in the Lord's Prayer, the ending of the Lord's Prayer, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. It's just so good and so important, and it's disputed. I get that, but I love that being in line in the text. People can argue with me about that if they want to. I really don't care at this point. When we say the Lord's Prayer together as a church, we include that. Even when we read the ESV, we include that. So I love that it's there. And also in this idea of the disputed texts remain, it is also intellectual, and I'm putting all this in this number 2 category, but it's intellectually honest about that. The footnotes, the textual footnotes on the New King James Version are incredible. They're scholarly. They show you the variance. They'll tell you whether or not the critical text or the majority text includes or doesn't include certain things. It's not trying to hide anything from you. And as a preacher, I really appreciate that, and we'll still point that out at times. I'm not trying to just wash over it all. So, number 2, the disputed texts remain. I really appreciate that. Have wanted that in my Bible translation for a long time for preaching and teaching, and I get that in the New King James Version. Number 3, this one might be probably the most niche to some extent, but I think it's very important. It preserves the word begotten in the translation of monogenes, okay, in the Greek. So like in John 3:16, or in the Gospel of John in the beginning, in chapter 1, we see the word begotten, and that is important to me. I think it's accurate. I've done a lot of study on this. Matthew Barrett's book, Simply Trinity, was really influential to me on here, thinking through this. The idea of the eternal generation of the Son is captured really well in the word begotten. It's about Trinitarian theology. It's about holding tightly to what's implied there, and I think begotten is a wonderful rendering that I want in my Bible and have for a long time. And the ESV will have that in Psalm 2, but it won't have it in the Gospel of John, and I don't like that. The NASB does also retain it, the NASB 95, and I give it props for that. I love that about it. But the New King James retains monogenes as is begotten, and I love that's in there. So that's kind of the nerd side of it a little bit, but I think it's important for Trinitarian theology. And so when we get to number 4 now, and this will help answer some of you, why not the NASB 95, other than there aren't as many editions and maybe not as much longevity. Number 4 is, it is formal equivalence in its translation philosophy. And if you've never read about this, it's just, there's a spectrum. No Bible is perfectly word for word, but the New King James really does strive to be accurate and word for word formal equivalence as much as possible. Yet it retains literary beauty and poetry. And I love the NASB 95. I love the way that it is very accurate, but it loses some cadence and some flow that's important for me as a reader and important for me as a preacher. And I think that's where the New King James really shines. It's why I've loved the ESV and still love it, is because it does contain that beautiful literary beauty that is absolutely present there, but it doesn't contain a lot of the other things I just mentioned here. The New King James does contain not only a formal equivalence translation philosophy, but also rich literary beauty when you read it. And that's something from the ESV that's always been important to me. I get that in the New King James, and I'm thankful for that. And a little subnote under that, I know some of you may be going, yeah, what about your church? Like, you've been using the ESV, and you're going to make a switch to preaching from the New King James. Won't that be jarring to them? I'll respond to that briefly. I actually would argue it's going to be an easy transition for my church. I already have a lot of church members who prefer and read the New King James Version. They always have. And they've been able to follow along just fine using the ESV. I have also church members who use the ESV. I think they will be able to follow along if they want to continue using the ESV, then they'll be able to follow along just fine. It's not going to be a huge deal. They're very similar in a lot of ways. It's not going to be overly jarring to them. And also, this made it easier. Right now we have ESV Pew Bibles, but we also have, I guess from the past, a ton of New King James Version Pew Bibles. So it'll be easy to swap those out. They're there. So I don't have to order anything new. I didn't realize this until this past Sunday, after I was like, well, that's going to be difficult. And I went searching and found we have a ton of New King James Version Pew Bibles. So it's going to be an easy transition, I think, for my congregation. Also, another thing that will be helpful, unlike the NASB 95, there's some good additions, but the New King James Version has so many great additions. It's easy to find everywhere. Thomas Nelson is doing a killer job at just putting out quality Bibles in the New King James. So I'm not at all worried about that. I think it's going to be quite an easy transition for my church to hear me start preaching from it. And then the last one, and this is more of like a personal reason. I could list more than these 5, but the 5th reason is more personal in some other ways, and that is that this is a translation that my wife and I both love. I know that sounds silly, and this is more on the personal side than anything, but my wife and I both love the New King James. My wife fell in love with the New King James when we moved out here. I had bought her a Sovereign collection, the purple New King James Sovereign collection, and she loved it. And after a season of a lot of difficulty, it really spoke to my wife, and she has really taken to it and loves it. Her top 2 translations would be the CSB and the New King James, and she loves to read the New King James. And that will make it really easy to transition to family worship. This is what we're going to use now. My wife is going to be reading the same Bible as I'm reading devotionally. That's going to make it wonderful. I'm really thankful for that, and us being together on that is going to be quite a big deal. I tried for a long time to convert her to using the ESV, and she just never could get into it. And I find that interesting because I think they're similar, but for some reason, the New King James really clicked with her. So I really like that it's going to help us stay connected together as a couple as we continue to use it, memorize scripture from it, teach it to our children. I am all for it. So those are 5 reasons. There's a lot more that I could give. All that to say, the New King James has triumphed, and the Lord has given me great peace about this, and I am very thankful for that. And in conclusion, I'm going to say this. I still love the ESV. That love is never going to go away. I've called it my heart translation, and it has been for a long time, and in some ways still will be. I'm sure memory verses will continue to flow out in the ESV, but I do think just from reading the New King James in the past, reading it through, and just being in love with it myself when I read it through, I think it's going to be an easy transition, and it will also become a heart translation for me. I could be wrong about that. And like I said, I reserve the right to change my mind, but I don't think that that's going to happen. This has been a long time coming to this decision, and I'm thankful for it to finally have peace about it. With that being said, just a quick reminder here, I'm talking about, for me, my main translation. And that's a word people use, my main. And that's what's happening here. It's a shift in my main translation, but that doesn't mean I won't continue to use other translations. I will still very much be referencing the ESV, the New American Standard 95, and the King James Version, as I often do, and the CSB a little bit as well. So this is not in any way saying you can't use other translations or I won't use that's silly. I will continue to use other translations with joy to help just supplement my study and my reading. The last thing I'll say is this. I love the New King James Version, and in a way, it kind of feels like returning to my roots. This is what my grandfather preached from and still preaches from to this day. I shifted to the ESV when my dad did. My dad loves the ESV, and I do too. In some ways, this is going to feel like a return to roots, and I like that. My dad also used to use the New King James as well. I'm looking forward to taking the plunge, diving in deep, and using this as my main translation. So, sorry for the roller coaster. I know this has been a lot, and I'm sorry for the length of this video. I'm sure it's been long, but I wanted to make it today. I also have, so this Bible is paragraph format. And I love paragraph format Bibles, but that's not my preferred Bible to preach from, is a paragraph format. So I have one coming that looks very similar to this. It's a single column. It's black instead of brown goatskin, but Thomas Nelson makes a New King James verse-by-verse single column with inner margin references that I have on the way, and I'm looking forward to getting that because that is going to be my new preaching Bible, and I'll have a review of that, of course. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to this. It's just been a roller coaster that I finally kind of feel peace about making the shift. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, all the things that help the channel. We're getting really close to 4,000 subs, and I have some really sweet giveaway options that I'm going to be presenting once we get close to that 4,000 sub mark. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything else other than they're really good options. So be sure and sub if you haven't as we get closer. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.